Once upon a time, there was a famous writer named Antoine de Saint-Exupéry whose country was being devoured by war. And he came to America, and there he felt helpless and lonely. Besides this, he was struggling in his marriage, and also with the memory of a near-fatal crash of his airplane years earlier in the Sahara Desert. A friend of his happened to notice this unhappiness and the agitation that seemed to possess him entirely, and she suggested that perhaps he consider writing a children's story. Maybe that would help. And so, once upon a time, there was a sweet little person, a little prince, who lived far away from our planet on an asteroid, and there, in the depths of space, he was very clear about several things. One of them was the quiet pleasure of looking at the sunset, which, given the size of his asteroid, he could enjoy as many times as he liked. He was clear on that. And he was also very clear on the need for what might be called planetary hygiene. They sleep deep in the heart of the earth's darkness, the little prince says of seeds. And someone among them is seized with a desire to awaken. And then this little seed will stretch itself and begin timidly at first to push a charming little sprig inoffensively upward towards the sun. If it is only a sprout of radish or the sprig of a rose bush, well, one would let it grow wherever it might wish to. But when it is a bad plant, one must destroy it as soon as possible, the very first instant that one recognizes it. Now note the tone of urgency here. It's because the bad plant that he's talking about is the baobab. The baobab, which he says is something you will never be able to get rid of if you attend to it too late. It spreads over the entire planet. It bores down clean through with its roots. And if the planet is too small and the baobabs are too many, they split it into pieces. It is a question of discipline, he says. When you have finished your own toilet in the morning, then it is time to attend to the toilet of your planet. Just so, with the greatest of care. No wonder the issue of the sheep was so pressing for him, right? Sheep eat the shoots. Sheep are a part of the discipline. The little prince was very clear on some things, but on other things, not so much. One day, a seed sprouted, and it was unlike any of the other small sprouts on his planet. And at first he was worried that perhaps it was a new kind of baobab, but it wasn't. She was a rose. She was stunning in her loveliness. "Oh, how beautiful you are," he said. He breathed in her fragrance, the fragrance that perfumed his entire planet. But she did not feel solid within herself. She did not feel her beauty as an intrinsic part of her. That insecurity led her to play games with the little prince, and it frustrated him. It disturbed him. He did not know what to do with her. He wanted to love her, but he did not know how. He was so unhappy. That is why he left his asteroid. That is what spurred him on to take a journey into the unknown. And the first leg of that journey, it involved encounter after encounter with people he ended up not liking at all. One was a narcissist. Everyone else became an extension of his own self-centered personal drama. It was outrageous to him if people did things that he did not like, because how dare they spoil his plans? How dare they do that? That other people have an actual independent existence. He could not imagine that. Then there was the businessman, and the little prince disturbed his furious counting because naturally the little prince wanted to know exactly what it was. that he was counting so furiously, but the businessman didn't care. All that mattered was owning it, whatever it was, and knowing how many of it there was. Then there was the lamplighter, whose life was reduced to utter absurdity because the orders he was given years before no longer made any sense to his radically changed world. But he refused to deviate from these orders because orders are orders. It did not matter how miserable the orders made things. Orders are orders. The little prince met these people and others as well, and every time he went away saying something along the lines of, "The grown-ups are very strange," or "They always need to have things explained," or "They are like that. One must not hold it against them." When this leg of the little prince's journey, or what this leg of the little prince's journey did for him, is add greater clarity to his life. He was already very clear about the value of sunsets and about planetary hygiene. And now he was clear about the kind of person that he could not admire, which is the person whose life has been utterly taken over by some kind of narrow purpose. Something has taken firm root inside them, and what was once a whole, round personality has been split into pieces, and now that person compulsively mistakes what is inessential for what is essential. They have become less than human, inhumane. Now, all of this is trying to shine a light into the shadow places of our lives. We know people who act exactly like narcissists and businessmen and lamplighters. We have been to their asteroids, right? There is a reason why The Little Prince story is the third most translated book in the world and one of the best-selling books ever published. When The Little Prince was published in 1943, people didn't get it. They were flummoxed. It's not a word you hear very often these days. They were flummoxed. It was a children's story they were expecting, which for them meant something sweet and simple, addressed to a certain chronological age. Yet here was a story that spoke to the youth in adults, even as it spoke to children. It was multi-layered and nuanced and disturbing at times and full of the struggle and the pain Saint-Exupéry was feeling in his life. Perhaps this is exactly parallel to the opening discussion of the book where the narrator speaks of his drawing number one. Drawing number one, which was that of a boa constrictor, which had swallowed up an elephant entirely, in its entirety. And he would show this picture to grown-ups, and all they'd see is what they were prepared to see, which was a picture of a big hat that tended to flop to one side. The Little Prince is like drawing number one. The essential stuff is invisible to the naked eye. You have to read it with your imagination and your heart. For example, the baobab seeds. Children, says the book, watch out for the baobabs. It spreads over the entire planet. It bores clear through it with its roots. Concern about this is what motivates the Little Prince's very first words in that book. If you please, draw me a sheep. Sheep eat the baobab roots. But why this intense and unrelenting insistence on planetary hygiene? It is Saint-Exupéry's way of touching on the great tragedy of his era. Nazism sweeping over Europe and his beloved country of France falling so quickly in the form of the Vichy state and the occupation. This sort of thing happens because people are of a certain type. They are strange grown-ups. They are narcissists. They are businessmen. They are lamplighters. They have lost something essential that would cause them to resist evil. Instead, they don't blink an eye at evil. Something tragic has happened to their minds and hearts. A baobab seed has sprouted there. Not so much a physical seed as a spiritual one. Consider Adolf Eichmann, the Nazi who was responsible for transporting millions of Jews to the death camps. He was a major organizer of the Holocaust, and yet he was not fanatical. He was not bloodthirsty. In fact, I think the sight of blood nauseated him. He was not mentally ill. Anti-Semitism was not a choice, but something that he just grew up with and he carried forward as a part of his heritage, sort of like the Confederate flag. He had little more on his mind than following orders. Orders are orders. Making the trains run on time was his priority, and it didn't matter whose lives he made miserable. What a strange grown-up, remarkably similar to the lamplighter character, don't you think? He did not pluck out the baobab seed sprouting in his heart. There was no sheep to chew it up. The sweet child he had once been, gone. I think it can be safely said, every character that the little prince encounters on an asteroid can be seen as someone whose heart has been ripped apart. Now, a quick side note. The final version of The Little Prince is minuscule compared to the initial draft, which has hundreds of pages. If you go to the Morgan Library in Manhattan, you can see how the draft pages are covered with fine lines of handwriting, and much has been crossed out. There are pages where only a single sentence stands out because every other word has been scribbled through. Most of what he wrote never made the final cut. Now, when I came to learn this, and specifically when I came to learn that Saint-Exupéry had put many more asteroids in his book and many more strange characters in his book than we see in the final version, well, it got me thinking, there's a lot of people today that would make perfect asteroid inhabitants whose hearts are ripped up. And we would be not so much different from the Little Prince in the way we might encounter them and walk away wondering about how strange the grown-ups are. For example, the TV news anchor. On this asteroid, we encounter him wearing a shiny suit. He's got a $200 haircut, and he is lily white. He is reflecting on the shooting last week at Emmanuel AME Church. It's more likely, he says, a matter of rising hostility against Christians in this country because of our biblical views. A sick act by someone who was mentally ill. That's what we really have here. Why are people talking about this as if it were a hate crime or even terrorism? That's crazy liberal talk. Besides, the TV news anchor says, no less than the entire Wall Street Journal editorial board agrees. And here's what they have to say. And he pulls out the Wall Street Journal. He pulls that paper out. He reads. This is what he reads. He says, today the system and philosophy of institutionalized racism that Dr. King talked about no longer exists. What causes such young men such as Dylan Roof to erupt in homicidal rage is a problem that defies explanation beyond the reality that evil still stalks humanity. It is no small solace that in committing such an act today, he stands alone. And the TV news reporter goes on to say that's what the editorial says. It's the act of a lone shooter, not racism. Racism no longer exists. That's the TV news anchor on his ass. I'm not making that up. That's the TV news asteroid on his. How strange the grown-ups are. Or consider yet another asteroid inhabitant. He is a Supreme Court justice. I'm kind of having fun here. You know, this is kind of fun. We encounter him shrouded in his black justice robes, and he is frowning. His colleagues, the majority of them, just did something that has changed the course of American history, a watershed moment in all our lives. Marriage equality. Love wins. Love wins. But, he's a downer. But, this is his rebuttal. He says, human dignity cannot be taken away by the government. Slaves did not lose their dignity any more than they lost their humanity because the government allowed them to be enslaved. Those held in internment camps did not lose their dignity because the government confined them. The government cannot bestow dignity and it cannot take it away. This is what the Supreme Court Justice on his asteroid. I said that like a cuss word, didn't I? On his asteroid says. It is astonishing logic. Of course human dignity is innate. We believe that's our first principle, but it can most certainly be prevented from flourishing by inequitable practices. People are vulnerable. Brutality gets underneath the skin. How possibly can that Supreme Court justice, whose own personal heritage bears the scars of slavery, demonstrate such thorough tone deafness towards another people who cry out against oppression? So many baobab seeds sprouting, even in this time of triumph. So many strange grown-ups. Even as we celebrate, we must continue the work. Planetary hygiene. Spiritual hygiene. Where is the sheep when you need one? We are now at a critical point in the Little Prince story. He has encountered plenty of strange asteroid characters through his journey, and now at last he comes to our planet Earth. And there he happens upon a garden full of roses. Listen. Who are you? He demands, thunderstruck. We are roses, the roses say. And he was overcome with sadness. His flower had told him that she was the only one of her kind in all of the universe. And here were 5,000 of them, all alike in one single garden. To himself he said, I thought I was rich, with a flower that was unique in all the world. And all I had was a very common rose. That does not make me any sort of great prince. And he laid down in the grass and he cried. This is when our story goes to an even deeper level, because this is where it is fully revealed, evidence of a baobab seed growing in the little prince's own heart, growing toward the point where it would rip apart his capacity to love. Now, we have seen how great a critic he is towards the grown-ups, and why not? That's just like shooting fish in a barrel. So how completely ironic that Saint-Exupéry would reveal the little prince to be a kind of grown-up in his own right. The kind of grown-up who is overwhelmed by all the beautiful people in the world and can't seem to rest in the love of one beautiful person. Or to shift metaphors, the kind of grown-up who is homeless because gorgeous house after gorgeous house entrances them and they cannot commit to living in any one in particular. Do you know of any grown-ups like this? You lie. Saint-Exupéry was certainly one of these grown-ups, thus his struggles in his marriage. I was too young to know how to love her, the little prince says, and Saint-Exupéry says it with him. And maybe we do as well. He had not yet learned the lesson that it is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. This is the insight that no baobab seed can survive. And this is the insight which the fox gives him. Sheep merely eat, but foxes are wise. Listen. Who are you? Asked the little prince, and added, you are very pretty to look at. I am a fox, said the fox. Come and play with me, proposed the little prince. I am so unhappy. I cannot play with you, the fox said. I am not tamed. Ah, please excuse me, said the little prince. But after some thought, he added, what does that mean, tame? It is an act too often neglected, said the fox. It means to establish ties. To establish ties? Just that, said the fox. To me, you are nothing more than a little boy who is just like 100,000 other little boys, and I have no need of you. And you, on your part, have no need of me. To you, I am nothing more than a fox like 100,000 other foxes. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you will be unique in all the world. To you, I shall be unique in all the world. I'm beginning to understand, said the little prince. There is a flower. I think she has tamed me. Sometime after this, the little prince returns to the garden of roses, all those thousands of roses, and listen to what he has to say. You are beautiful, but you are empty, he says to the roses. One could not die for you. To be sure, an ordinary passerby would think that my rose looked just like you, the rose that belongs to me. But in herself alone, she is more important than all you hundreds of other roses, because it is she that I have watered, because it is she that I have put under the glass globe, because it is she that I have sheltered behind the screen, because it is her that I have killed the caterpillars, except one or two that we saved to become butterflies, because it is she that I have listened to when she grumbled or boasted. Or even sometimes she said nothing, because she is my rose. The spiritual baobab seed wants to rip apart our capacity for love. But the medicine that the fox gives the little prince is the insight that establishing ties with another being, the taming process, changes everything. Here's a concrete example. The proportion of Americans who reported knowing somebody gay increased from 25% in 1985 to 74% in the year 2000. And you know that that percentage has increased. It is much higher today. And you have to know that this is a major factor in our achievement of marriage equality in this nation. Knowing gay people strongly predicts support for human rights. Knowing people of a different culture and color predicts support for anti-racism and multiculturalism. Friendship makes for justice. Friendship makes for justice. Friendship makes for justice. Friendship makes for justice, the result of taming and being tamed at whatever level of life cannot be underestimated. You know whose you are. There are people you really would die for. My life is very monotonous, says the fox. I hunt chickens. Men hunt me. All the chickens are just alike. All the men are just alike. And in consequence, I am a little bored. But if you tame me, it will be as if the sun has shone upon my life. I shall know the sounds of a step that will be different from all other sounds. Your steps send me hurrying back underneath the ground. Others' steps send me hurrying underneath the ground. Yours will call me like music out of my burrow. And then look, do you see the grain fields down yonder? I do not eat bread. Wheat is of no use to me. The wheat fields have nothing to say to me, and that is sad. But you have hair the color of gold. Think how wonderful that will be when you have tamed me. The grain, which is also golden, will bring back to me the thought of you, and I shall love to listen to the sound of the wheat in the wind. Listen to that. I shall love to listen to the wind in the wheat. Everything serves to remind you of the one who has tamed you. Whenever I eat pretzel M&Ms, or I make grilled cheese sandwiches, the presence of a loved one is summoned up for me. They are there. They are there. It is wonderful. The Son has indeed come into my life. The whole world carries signs of the ones you love. The whole world carries those signs. The world becomes personalized with the ones you love. It does not matter that passers-by cannot see what you see. It does not matter that a passerby doesn't see what I see in my grilled cheese sandwich. It doesn't matter that the passerby doesn't see what I see when I'm eating my pretzel M&Ms. It does not matter. The richness of your life is still valid. It is still real. You are seeing with the eyes of the heart. What is essential is invisible to the physical eye. Grown-ups are mushrooms, says the little prince. And thanks to the fox, he will escape that dire fate. He will not be a mushroom himself. Now he knows what love means. Now he can return to his rose, and he can do so with clarity. Now he is completely clear. Now he can go home. And this is the children's story that the famous writer Antoine de Saint-Exupéry wrote once upon a time, when his country was being devoured by war, and he was an expat in America, and he was feeling helpless, and he was feeling lonely. This is the story he wrote once upon a time to process his near disastrous airplane crash in the Sahara and the way his marriage was also crashing. He took his friend's advice. Write a children's story. Did it help? Does it help? I think it did, and I think it does. Amen.